Welcome back. You're watching Big Deal, and we are discussing the hospital space and the hectic deal flow in this particular sector. Now, Abhinay, we were discussing the geographical play and M&A driven because of the geographies. But there is also another, segmentation that is with the services and the quality of service that is being provided. Now, what are the areas which are gaining more traction and more attractive when it comes to the M&A or investment space? And what are the areas which are growing very fast, even in terms of performance as well as demand?
Yeah, so Nisha, for us, it has always been that we are a multi-speciality hospital. So we focus on all specialties equally, but we are seeing a lot of development in the oncology space, in the gastroenterology space. A lot of these medical specialties are evolving into interventional spaces and also taking away a lot of the surgical workload. So we are seeing a lot of scope of expansion in oncology, and a lot of these medical specialties taking up active intervention role moving forward.
All right. So that's also one of the important leads, Mitesh. Do you think that it's also specialty-based investment as well as consolidation, which is also taking place? How are you seeing the deal flow trend going from here?
So there are three mega trends, Nisha, that we are looking at. So one is the rise of consumerism in healthcare. Everyone is now using Dr. Google. You have a cough, you have a lot of phlegm, Google will tell you you probably have lung cancer. So that's one mega trend where consumers are coming armed with information to the doctor. Second is digital transformation.
Yes.
As it stands today, Apple Watch outsells the entire Swiss watch industry.
Wow.
Right. So that's the amount of data we are all carrying now with us.
Yes.
And third, which we alluded to earlier, is the rise of insurance in this industry, which is leading to more volumes, but also a lot more complex clinical work.
Yes.
And the way that will pan out, as we're now seeing in the developed world, in the US, is it will lead to value-based care, where insurance companies will pay the hospitals not for keeping the patients inside the hospital, but for keeping them outside the hospital. How does all of this combine and get into deal activity? One, you will see larger hospitals getting funded. You will see platforms getting built, which can, combine all of these changes and be ready to serve the patient, not just inside the hospital, but outside the hospital, and in a connected way through the entire patient journey while they're sitting at home, coming to hospital, and so on.
Right.
So that's a big mega trend. That's where the deal flow will happen. You will see deal flow happening towards these platforms.
Yes.
The second aspect is the public market. So public market today, hospitals are underrepresented, right? So as a percentage of size of the industry, which is about $60 billion, the total combined market cap of all the hospital companies is about $23 billion, so about 40%. If you look at the same statistic for the pharma industry, that's about 300% compared to the 40%. So there's a lot more action to come in the public market.
Yes.
You can count on Abhinay growing his market share a lot. And you can count on a lot more companies getting listed in the hospital space.
Right. But Abhinay, I have to ask you one question while you're sitting in the hot seat. And yes, this is a great sector to be in. But, regulatory aspect has been the hot topic of discussion for a very long time. So how do you really strike the balance between the government regulations on pricing and, on the other hand, also performance for creating that stakeholder value? You're a listed entity.
Right. So on the regulatory side, there are two things that are happening. One is, what happened 5-6 years ago was some price control on stents. But if you look at the follow-up action after that, the government has always been discussing with private players to understand how they can lower the price for the end consumer. So I don't see that as a big risk at this point in time, because there's always been bilateral dialogue. People, they're more encouraging, they're more talking to us and understanding how we can solve the problem mutually and keep it very transparent. So I don't see that as a big issue, how it was showcased 5-7 years ago when the stent fiasco happened. But the other good thing that has happened, which is driving demand up and which you will see a lot of traction in the future, is the whole Ayushman Bharat scheme. I think given the way it is designed and the way it's being executed, as and when more and more hospitals start coming up in tier 2, tier 3, either through private investments or through PPP models, you will see a lot of traction in increasing the overall supply, overall volume of utilization of the scheme moving forward. So I think that's one very good initiative by the government.
Yes, very well pointed out. And Kaivaan, this is the segment which is going to give maximum traction to the sector going forward.
Yeah, I think we as a country probably have entered an era, a glorious era, where mass healthcare should be made available for all. And you know, while the government continues to strengthen the public health infrastructure, it is clear that the private sector will continue to be the bedrock for high-end care, particularly tertiary and quaternary care. And the sector is clearly tailoring their model for inclusion.
Yes.
And what I see is that the real transformation that we'll see in the sector is contingent on scalable, value-based models coming up. And just to give you a few examples, the way Sahyadri has dominated Pune through its workhorse model, you look at HCG, they've got market leadership in 11 non-metros and taking cancer care to the last mile. Yes. Kaveri started with in Trichy and has become a dominant South India player. Apollo is present in 15 cities.
So I see all of them either as consolidators in their own spaces or being consolidated by some of the bigger players. So Mitesh, finally, putting all the things together as an investor, how do you view it? Because in terms of risk and reward ratio and assessment, because for most of the foreign players, any sector which is heavily regulated by the government has always been a risky affair.
Sure. So we see a demand for capital in this sector. If you add up the numbers, we need at least $80 to $100 billion to generate enough quality capacity in the country, which means there's a need for investment.
Yes.
Valuations are quite full in the sector, which becomes a deterrent. It's also a very capital intensive sector, so has very long gestation to generate returns.
Yes.
And for that reason and the added regulatory complexity, sector has been lightly regulated in the past, but increasingly getting more attention from the government for the right reasons, but it creates uncertainty for a new investor like us coming in, which makes the returns moderate in the sector. I would not say they are very high, but on the other hand, it's also a lower risk sector.
Yes.
There's a lot of private equity investment which has already gone into hospitals, and I believe there is no single private equity fund who has lost money investing in the hospital sector.
Yes.
So that makes it a pretty attractive risk-adjusted
And that also
reward.
gives you the confidence because of the returns parameter in the past. And you, of course, bake in these uncertainties in your dynamics while doing the valuation as
Absolutely.
well. All right. Thank you so much, Mitesh, Kaivaan, as well as Abhinay, for joining us on this riveting discussion on the hospital space, where we are likely to see a lot of deal action, and probably the largest hospital deal in the country is also set to be announced very soon. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Big Deal. Thank you so much for watching.